Brayden Thibault was born on March 5, 2000. At 17, he lived in St. Stephen, New Brunswick, Canada. Described as funny and sarcastic, Brayden was a star athlete, a devoted grandson, and a beloved brother to 5 siblings. Tragically, during the summer of 2017, Brayden mysteriously disappeared. For 2 weeks before his disappearance, Brayden had been visiting friends in Fredericton, about an hour and a half away. While there, the teenagers spent their days hanging out and playing basketball. On the morning of Monday, July 31st, 2017, the day he vanished, Brayden was in regular contact with his family through calls, texts, and Facebook. In their final conversation, his mother, Amanda Frigol, recalled giving him a heartfelt speech about making good choices. Brayden ended the call by promising he'd be back in a couple of days, exchanging affectionate "I love yous," with Brayden responding, "I love you more, Mama." That afternoon, Brayden was last seen on Gibson Street, on the north side of Fredericton. Immediately after he disappeared, police informed Amanda that they believed he had been murdered. However, it wasn't until 3 months later that the Canadian Mounted Police's Major Crime Unit reclassified his disappearance from a missing person case to a suspected homicide. The official reclassification came 2 years later, on July 30th, 2019. Despite initial searches, few concrete details emerged. Rumors circulated that he had been seen in a vehicle, on the side of the road, or in a store. Sadly, Amanda remained in the dark about the true last known location of her son. Over time, frustration grew as the delay in treating his case as a homicide seemed to stall progress, leaving many to wonder if key information was being withheld. In February 2018, Amanda issued a public statement expressing the family's ongoing anguish and urging anyone with information to come forward. "I love you more, Mama," were the last words I heard my son say. That was more than 7 months ago. Since then, I've relived every moment of the last 17 years of his life. Every achievement, every struggle, and all the moments in between. I want to speak from my heart today, not out of fear or anger, though it's difficult not to feel those emotions. I am angry that I couldn't protect him. Angry that someone knows what happened to him but won't come forward, and scared that I may never find him. I miss my son, the way he smiled, his hugs, his sense of humor, and his sarcasm. I never thought I'd miss hearing him argue with his brother and sister, but I miss that too. I miss hearing the terrible rap music he listened to, seeing him dance with his little sister just to make her smile, and even fighting about curfews and cleaning his room. But what I miss most is his kind soul and his beautiful heart. I miss watching him play sports. People often told me I'd see Brayden in the Olympics someday. He was an exceptional athlete, happiest on a football field, a soccer field, or a wrestling mat. Brayden was a son, a brother, an uncle, a grandson, a nephew, and a friend to so many. I feel incredibly helpless knowing I can't take away their fears or give them answers. I've watched my children lose their innocence when I had to tell them that Brayden wasn't just away somewhere. I've held the broken hearts of those who loved him most. I want to thank our friends and our community for praying for my son, for our family, and for the many strangers who have prayed for a boy they've never met. I ask that you continue to pray, but add a prayer for those who have information, praying that they'll find the courage and compassion to come forward. You all have someone in your life that you love. If you were forced to live through even a moment of this nightmare, I would pray that the people with information would come forward. My family is asking for the same respect and compassion we would show yours. If you have any information about what happened to my son or where he is, please contact the police or Crime Stoppers. Please help them find Brayden, bring him home, and help begin the healing process for the hearts of all who love him. By August 2019, the Canadian Mounted Police had expanded their search to include areas in Moncton and conducted further investigations near McMiniman Court in Fredericton, about 2.5 miles from Gibson Street, where Brayden was last seen. Search crews and air assets were deployed, but despite these efforts, nothing was found. If anything was discovered, the public was not made aware. Brayden Thibault disappeared on July 31, 2017, and as of March 2025, this case remains unsolved. At 28 years old, Carrie Singer was living with her boyfriend, Robert DeZern, in Hampton, Virginia. Originally from Jacksonville, Florida, Carrie had moved to Virginia only a few months prior, hoping to build a new life. She had a fiery personality and was known for being strong-willed, though her social circle in Virginia remained small, making it harder for investigators to piece together her life before tragedy struck. On July 1, 2004, a farmer in Isle of Wight County, Virginia, stumbled upon a grisly scene. The partially unclothed body of Carrie lying near the edge of a dirt road close to Moorgards Beach. She had been brutally beaten to death and then discarded in an isolated field. The brutality of Carrie's murder shocked investigators. She had suffered severe blunt force trauma to the head, and due to the time her body had been exposed to the elements, combined with the damage caused by animals, police were unable to determine if she had been sexually assaulted. The environmental exposure also complicated the collection of forensic evidence, initially leaving investigators with little to no leads. 2 days before her body was discovered, investigators learned of a violent altercation between Carrie and Robert at their home in Hampton. However, it was determined that Carrie had been the aggressor in the dispute. Following the argument, she left the home. The next day, she checked into the King James Motel in Newport News and withdrew money from an ATM at a nearby 7-Eleven on Jefferson Avenue. That would be the last known activity before her tragic death. Initially, Robert was considered a prime suspect in Carrie's murder. However, after fully cooperating with investigators and passing a polygraph test, he was ruled out as a suspect. Robert later passed away in 2013. With little to go on, investigators turned to advancements in forensic science to help solve the case. In 2017, over a decade after her murder, the Isle of Wight County Sheriff's Office released new information. Using DNA phenotyping technology through Parabond nanolabs, they created a composite image of the suspect based on DNA evidence recovered from the crime scene. The results indicated that Carrie's killer was likely a Hispanic or Latino male. This forensic breakthrough offered hope of solving the case, but it also presented challenges, as the composite image could not predict factors like age, weight, or hairstyle. 2 versions of the suspect were released, approximating how he might have looked at ages 25 and 55. Detectives believe that Carrie's violent nature could have played a role in the events leading up to her murder, though many questions still remain unanswered. It's possible that Carrie Singer crossed paths with someone unwilling to back down, sparking a confrontation that ended in tragedy. According to her mother, the Killingsfield television show, in an attempt to entice and engage viewers, manufactured a timeline and inaccurately portrayed events while featuring Carrie's case. If true, this would be highly unethical. Carrie Singer was found murdered on July 1, 2004, and as of March 2025, her case remains unsolved. Christopher James Rivers was born on October 14, 1972, and spent most of his life in Porcupine, Ontario. By his mid-40s, he was well known in his community and had an established life in the area. Everything seemed normal until one day he vanished without a trace. On August 29, 2017, Christopher was last seen in Timmins, Ontario. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at the time, but just over a week later, on September 6, 2017, his vehicle was found abandoned deep in a wooded area off Murphy Road. The discovery sparked concern and confusion, and despite the unsettling circumstances, the search for Christopher only lasted a few days. What makes Christopher's disappearance even more eerie is that 10 years earlier, in July 2007, another man, Luciano Triniozzi, had gone missing in almost the exact same location. At 79 years old, Luciano had left his home for a routine trip to go blueberry picking in an isolated area near Highway 655. He never returned. His vehicle was found on July 25, 2007, parked along Murphy Road, but something was off. His blueberry baskets remained inside, untouched. The windows were rolled down, which was unusual for Luciano, who always made sure to lock his car and hide the keys on the back tire. It was as if he had simply vanished. The similarities between the two cases are unsettling. Christopher's and Luciano's vehicles were found just 400 feet apart in an area known for its dense wilderness and challenging terrain. Murphy Road itself is the unofficial name for the long stretch connecting Highway 655 to Florence Street near the Bell Creek mine site. It's an area where few people venture without a reason, raising even more questions about what might have happened to both men. Despite investigations and volunteer searches, no definitive answers have been found. The families of Christopher Rivers and Luciano Triniozzi have been left haunted by the mystery of Murphy Road, a place where two men seemingly disappeared into thin air a decade apart. As of March 2025, they have never been found, and this case remains unsolved. Pamela Jane Holopainen was born on August 1, 1981, in Hamilton, Ontario. Pamela was the younger of two sisters, with a close bond to her older sibling, Vanessa Brousseau. In 1982, the family moved to South Porcupine, a neighborhood of Timmins, where Pamela became actively involved in the indigenous community efforts and later served as president of the Timmins Native Friendship Center. Unfortunately, in 2003, Pamela would mysteriously disappear. On the night of December 13, 2003, 22-year-old Pamela asked her sister Vanessa to babysit so she and her common-law partner, Chris Manchester, could attend a house party. Vanessa already had prior arrangements, so Pamela left her children with someone else. The party would not end well, with Pamela and Chris getting into a heated argument around 2 a.m. Upset, Pamela left the party on foot with the intention of walking back to her apartment. Partygoers would say that Chris was following close behind. However, after leaving, Pamela was never seen again. Vanessa tried calling her the next day but only reached her voicemail. In the days leading up to Christmas, Vanessa attempted to drop off gifts for Pamela's sons, but received no response. This was very alarming because Vanessa usually spoke with Pamela several times a day. However, she assumed Pamela and the kids were with Chris and his family celebrating the upcoming holiday. But Christmas 2003 came and went with no call or visit from Pamela. Her loved ones knew something was terribly wrong. It was a bitterly cold day in St. Louis, Missouri on February 28, 1983, when two men searching for scrap metal stumbled upon a discovery that would haunt them forever. As one of them flicked on a lighter to illuminate the darkness of an abandoned basement, the small flame cast a glow over something on the floor. What they saw sent chills down their spines. Lying face down, motionless, was the lifeless body of a young girl. Her wrists were bound behind her back with red and white nylon rope. Mold had begun to grow in the area where her head should have been, a grim indication that she had been there for some time. She was clothed in a yellow V-neck sweater stained with blood, and the tag had been removed. Authorities arrived quickly and examined the unsettling scene. At first, investigators believed they had found the body of an adult woman, but it soon became clear this was a child, estimated to be between 8 and 11 years old. The child's identity was a mystery, as no missing persons reports at the time matched her description. Investigators searched through local schools, foster care systems, and runaway reports, but no one came forward to claim her. The mystery deepened as all leads turned up empty. Forensic experts later determined that the child had likely spent most of her life in one of the following states: Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, Louisiana, or one of the Carolinas. Despite efforts to identify her, no clues surfaced, and she was ultimately buried as a Jane Doe in the Calvary Cemetery in St. Louis. Years later, investigators revisited the case and began looking into suspects who might be connected to the crime. One such suspect was Vernon Brown, a man with a disturbing history. In 1973, Brown was convicted of a violent crime involving a young girl. After serving time, he was released, but continued to display troubling behavior. Investigators began to focus on him as they pieced together evidence that might connect him to the case of the St. Louis Jane Doe. Despite these efforts, the case remains unsolved, and the identity of the young girl is still unknown. The community continues to hope that one day the truth will come to light and justice will be served. As she walked past Vernon Brown's house, he was waiting on his front porch and lured her inside. Once she was in his home, he ordered his stepchildren to go to their rooms and lock the doors from the outside. Janet was taken to the basement where she was tied up. Tragically, Janet's life was cut short, and her screams for help were heard by his stepchildren, who were powerless to intervene. 3 days later, on October 27, 1986, Janet's lifeless body was discovered. A neighbor had seen her inside Brown's house, and when police confronted him, he confessed to the crime. He also admitted to the murder of 19-year-old Sinetta Ford in 1985. Despite being questioned about the St. Louis Jane Doe case, Brown never confessed to her murder. For many years, the case remained unsolved until forensic genealogy provided a new lead. In the documentary, Our Precious Hope, researchers shared that they had identified a familial match through a genealogy database. A woman was found to be closely related to St. Louis Jane Doe, and authorities reached out to her for more information. However, instead of assisting, she refused to cooperate. In a puzzling turn, she removed her profile from the Ancestry website, leaving many wondering if she knew more than she let on. Was she protecting someone? Did she have knowledge of the truth behind the young girl's death? As of today, the identity of the St. Louis Jane Doe remains a mystery. Over 40 years have passed since her body was discovered, and the girl found bound and headless in that abandoned basement remains nameless. Who was she? Who took her life? Why has no one come forward with answers? Perhaps one day DNA advancements will finally provide the answers and give her the identity and justice she deserves. As of March 2025, the identity of the St. Louis Jane Doe remains a mystery. Over 40 years have passed since her body was discovered, and the girl found bound and headless in that abandoned basement remains nameless. Who was she? Who took her life? Why has no one come forward with answers? Perhaps one day DNA advancements will finally provide the answers and give her the identity and justice she deserves.